Hi, I'm Corey Reed, and on behalf of all of us at John Deere, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. In this season of giving thanks, I'm especially grateful for the farmers and ranchers who work the land each and every day to produce the food we eat, the fuel we use, and the clothes we wear. During this time, we also find ourselves reflecting on both the challenges and triumphs of the past year. But we also keep an eye on the future and the possibilities ahead. At John Deere, that means delivering new and innovative, high-quality equipment solutions, including those developed right here at John Deere Harvester Works in Illinois, that help farmers and ranchers do more with less. For most of us, fall harvest is wrapping up or has already, which means that time of year when we get together with family and friends to give thanks. From the John Deere team, we sincerely hope you enjoy this time and the traditions of the season. Happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for everything you do for American agriculture.
Hello and happy Thanksgiving. I'm Tyne Morgan.
And I'm Clinton Griffiths. We're both happy to be joining you again this year to celebrate the end of another harvest season.
That's right, Clinton. But we know this year wasn't without its challenges, whether it was financial or the never-ending battle with Mother Nature. That is especially the case in states hit hard by Hurricane Helene.
That's right, Tyne. The powerful storm hitting Florida toward the end of September, bringing damage to several states with nearly 100,000 farms in the hurricane's path. Farmers losing crops, livestock, and equipment.
One of the hardest hit states is North Carolina, where damage to infrastructure left some areas in the western part of the state inaccessible, as Linda Loveland of the North Carolina Farm Bureau shows us.
I'm not sure I'll ever see Yancey County rebuilt back to where it was in my lifetime.
Helene is long gone, yet the reality of its impact remains.
People have lost homes, people have lost lives. We're going to be dealing with scars from this flood for centuries from now. Debris like you can't even imagine. This field used to be pretty much at road level. Now it's probably 2 to 3 foot higher. This barn was actually sitting about 200 yards up from where we stand right now. The floodwaters at this point were probably somewhere in the order of 500 yards wide. 30 yards across is what this river typically runs.
He showed us the after effects at his own farm.
We've got a boatload of fence to rebuild. We did lose some corn. The pasture behind the house has developed a bit of a mudslide that's not broken loose yet, but has got me worried now. And then our timber, I would say my wife and I probably lost 2/3 of our timber. The wind just, when you go up on the mountain, it looks like pickup sticks.
He talked about the loss of other agricultural land in a county that needs to preserve as much as possible.
Some of the most fertile land in Yancey County was along the Cane River Valley. A lot of, flat river bottoms, sandy, fertile, great places to grow corn, hay, things of that nature. But this storm was ruthless. I mean, just behind us in a 400, 500 yard stretch, there's been 6, 8, 10 acres of land that's lost that would take tens of thousands of loads of dirt to ever reclaim. I'm not sure that will ever be reclaimed. And that is definitely a detriment to the county because these river bottoms were super valuable. I mean, it was some of the best farmland in the counties.
So much lost and so many questions about how to move forward.
And I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges moving forward is how do we rebuild? How do we get back to a point of normalcy? How do we get back to where we was? And I think that's going to be one of our greatest challenges.
And our thanks to Linda Loveland and the North Carolina Farm Bureau.
In Clinton, farmers across the U.S. have stepped up to help those impacted by Hurricane Helene. Recently, our own Machinery Pete highlighted an auction by Justice Farm and Construction Equipment in Lewisburg, North Carolina, where auctioneer Jason Acock sold his personal farm tractor, donating 100% of the profits directly to farmers affected by the hurricane. The sale raised a total of $60,000. The tractor sold for $23,000. The rest was an additional bidder donations.
That's the generosity of farm country showing through right there, Tyne.
That is for sure. And coming up, more of that giving spirit, including why these farmers were lining up just to give their grain away.
And a farmer who has decided this harvest will be his last.
Harvest of Thanks is brought to you by John Deere. Your land, your brand. Technology, equipment, and support to help you farm better now and generations from now.
Well, for many, farming is more than a job. It's a lifestyle that is often passed on from generation to generation. But for one Nebraska farmer, he's decided to take early retirement. And as Michelle Rook tells us, he's doing it with a full heart and a clear conscience.
2024 was the final harvest season for fourth-generation farmer Jay Reiners. With none of his kids wanting to come home to take over the farm, he made the tough decision to retire. However, his farm will still leave a legacy, even if it isn't his immediate family. Jay Reiners is the fourth generation on this farm in south central Nebraska, homesteaded by his great-grandfather in 1892.
I've been farming full-time since 1990 myself.
Over the last 34 years, he's grown the operation to 2,700 acres through continuous improvement and cutting-edge technology. And Reiners, just like his father, intended to pass the farm down to the next generation.
Our oldest, we tried farming together when he was in college, and it's like finally he and I are too much alike. We butted heads, and it's like, you need to go work for a real boss instead of dad for a boss.
Reiners' youngest son grew up in the tractor seat, but surprisingly declared one day he did not want to return to the farm either.
I just see you guys, all the stress, all the struggles, you know, going to the banker, all this stuff, and, you know, the storms coming up, you know, the worries and all that stuff. And he goes, I just don't want to live that life, which I totally get and don't blame him.
In fact, for Reiners, it came as a huge relief and helped him decide 2024 would be his last season farming.
And that's probably what's driven my decision to retire at age 54. Really is like, I don't have anyone coming back, so why fight it, I guess.
He was also stressed out by the weather and volatile markets.
That's probably the biggest stress, you know, not worrying about whether we have a corn crop standing the next morning when you wake up. Second biggest stress is probably marketing.
This fall, all Reiners' kids came back to share in the harvest and ride in the combine with him for the last time.
Yeah, it was a great, you know, great family ending, I should say.
When he finally got to the last round, he was nearly numb.
I thought I'd shed a tear, but my auger wagon driver said, I noticed the combine got faster and faster. It's just like, please God, just let it get to the end before something breaks down.
Reiners isn't selling his farm, but instead renting the land of friends and will help kickstart another generation.
The guy that's farming my ground, his son's coming back, so yeah, I'm passing down a legacy to somebody else's kid, which is fine. Give them the opportunity.
And he has no regrets because the legacy of the farm lives on in the success of his 5 children. As for Jay, while serving on the Nebraska Corn Board, he discovered another calling.
I want to continue on in an international trade policy and stuff like that. That's where my heart really is.
And that will allow him to continue to promote the industry he loves in the next chapter of his career. I'm Michelle Rook with this Harvest of Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Well, up next, a well-known basketball team is thankful just to exist, not just this year, but every year. How a cornfield and the help of one small town saved a legacy in the making. That's next.
The Los Angeles Lakers is one of the most successful teams in the history of basketball, but it was almost the team that wasn't. Andrew McCrae tells the story of the Minneapolis Lakers, a snowstorm, and the team's unexpected arrival in the town of Carroll, Iowa.
This may look like just another basketball court in a city park, but take a closer look at the purple and gold paint and the plaque here in front, and you'll find that there's a much bigger story, a story that dates to 1960. It was the night of January 17th, 1960. The Minneapolis Lakers NBA basketball team had lost to the St. Louis Hawks on Sunday evening in St. Louis. The team boarded their DC-3 at 8:30 that night for their flight back to Minneapolis. As John Steffes explains, the plane lost electrical power soon after takeoff. They had no instruments, no radar, and virtually no vision as they flew into a snowstorm somewhere over Iowa. The pilots decided to try and descend low enough to see the ground and perhaps find a landing spot. They didn't know it at the time, but they were over the town of Carroll, Iowa.
One guy who lived by the water tower, he took his kids to the basement. It just shook the house. It's a loud plane, so when you buzz the town at least 9 times, you're waking people up.
Carroll resident Dr. Jack Donovan was in bed, now in the early hours of January 18th.
The plane woke me. It was going this way and coming back this way. Finally, it really got loud, and I got up. But my neighbor across the street was standing there waving his arms at me. He said, "Duck."
The pilots knew the roar of their engines were waking people. They could see porch lights coming on. But where were they? And was there someplace to land here?
Came around that water tower, and as he turned left, he saw the L's in the water tower. As he turned around the water tower, he could look out and see this dark spot out here.
It was a cornfield. A wet fall had prevented the area from being harvested, and the pilots decided it would become their runway. Norman Hutchison remembers coming to this spot to see what had taken place.
It was just a cornfield, and here's this airplane that made a track down through the corn and setting up against the fence down there, and just looked like he landed in an airport, except it wasn't an airport.
Townspeople rushed to the scene to see the fate of the plane and passengers. Townspeople opened the hotel and the switchboard, providing a way to call home and a bed for the night. The team took a bus back to Minneapolis the next day. The plane was repaired, and a bulldozer cleared a path in the cornfield for it to take off 3 days later. The team continued to use the plane. But if the pilots had not pulled off the landing and all would have perished, NBA basketball would probably be different today.
There were only 8 teams in the NBA back then, and so the Lakers were this close to being wiped out that night.
And the Minneapolis Lakers, who were to move to Los Angeles the next year, would have ceased to exist, eliminating an iconic team in today's NBA. On the 50th anniversary of the life-saving landing here, the town and the LA Lakers joined together to build an outdoor basketball court at the site where it all happened. The court is marked with the LA Lakers colors of purple and gold and has a light blue border, a nod to the colors of the old Minneapolis Lakers. You can come here today to play basketball yourself at the site where a town welcomed an NBA team when they made their emergency landing in a snowy cornfield. For Harvest of Thanks, traveling the countryside in Carroll, Iowa, I'm Andrew McCrae.
With tight margins these days and prices penciling out in the red for farmers, just giving away grain is a big deal. But farmers were lining up to do it in one community. Hear why next.
Well, we've all heard it before. Farming is bad for the environment. All large farms are corporate farms. Agriculture is killing the planet. Those misconceptions about ag seem to be endless. But a group of farmers is trying to change that by harvesting for their future.
This is 50 years for me, so I'm the 3rd generation.
For 50 years, this has been Mike McLaughlin's view every fall. The landscape of ag has changed across the last 5 decades, but harvest is the constant every year.
Yields are good. Could be one of the best crops I've ever had, I think.
And in a year of low commodity prices, when every bushel counts, this just may be one of his most selfless harvests yet.
You hope you've done enough over the years that when you get towards retirement that you can do some things like this.
McLaughlin, along with his wife and farm, decided this harvest to give back, bringing in grain that could be donated to the Children's Discovery Museum in Normal, Illinois.
Here's the cows, and you can actually milk them.
An exhibit that's nearly 20 years old still houses a treasure trove for agriculture, allowing kids to immerse themselves with life on the farm. But now there's a new growth this museum is nurturing to modernize the museum and better reflect modern ag.
The very first gift of our campaign was actually a farm family that stepped up and said, let us be a part of this.
This fall, as the grain rushed in from the field, farmers like McLaughlin could donate money or a truckload of grain And it's all to take the museum from this to this.
We really are leaning into the agriculture exhibit really being the heart of the museum. So everything starts in the ag exhibit and kind of moves out from health and nutrition, even into transportation.
A $4 million renovation project that's a monumental undertaking, but one that this retired teacher, farmer's wife, and proud grandma knew the farmers of McLean County were up for.
I also said if a farmer wants to tell the story, they need to be able to do it. Instead of having somebody like me, a city person, come in and say this is what it's all about, they need to have the opportunity to tell their story, and this is it.
So she got to work, contacting grain elevators, posting signs, and spreading the word far and wide.
With the exhibit being as old as it is, there's just a lot of farming trends that are outdated. And so we want to make sure that we're showcasing kind of the farm of the future for our kiddos.
A $4 million feat, and it's agriculture that's rising to the occasion.
It's been work, but it's been fun. The farm families have always been welcoming and loved to hear the story and wanted to be part of it. And that's really the amazing part, is the community, the ag community embraces this.
Well, coming up, a celebration of steel that helped push farmers farther west, the beauty and important role windmills played and continue to play on the farm. That's next.
Harvest of Thanks is brought to you by John Deere. Your land, your brand. Technology, equipment, and support to help you farm better now and generations from now.
More than 100 years ago, they represented life itself on the farm, dotting the landscape of the plains, carrying water from deep underground to the surface.
This morning, we take a look at the humble windmill and give thanks for its important role in history as we visit an Indiana museum dedicated to keeping them alive. Serenity in rhythm as the sounds of progress echoes across this Indiana acreage. Each windmill a story from generations past.
The design hasn't changed much. You've got your fan blade, you've got your gearbox that transforms the wind into mechanical power or force to pump the water, and there really hasn't been a change.
The Mid-American Windmill Museum and its spinning displays stand tall in Kendallville, once a hotbed for mill manufacturers.
At the turn of the century, in this tri-state area, there was over 100 different windmill manufacturers.
This was the hub of the windmill companies because of the wood that was available, the poplar, the oak, hickory.
First patented in 1854 by Daniel Halliday, he created a windmill that could automatically turn to face changing wind directions and mechanically self-regulate its own speed.
There's a lot of people that understand the mechanics of things if you work on the farm, and he probably had to be involved with agriculture of some sort in those days.
As the West expanded and surface water in America's vast arid regions became harder to find, the windmill stood in the gap, a stoic symbol of civilization silhouetted against a painted sky.
And when you're out in a 160,000 acre ranch, they're very useful out there, and the only way to get water to the cattle.
Windmills also helped drive settlers to new regions as water stations dotted the railroad every 20 to 50 miles in service of thirsty steam-powered locomotives. It's a piece of history this museum is pouring back into the community.
Most kids don't grow up on farms anymore. It's real enlightening to see these kids understand how this all works and where the water actually comes from.
They give a lot of tours to kids, but it's not uncommon to find a nostalgic adult sitting among the mills transported to days gone by.
A lot of people enjoy the noises, because you don't hear the noises like that in the cities anymore, right? You hear honking horns in big cities and sirens and so on, and you can come out here and enjoy the serenity of what it might have been like in the late 1800s to early 1900s.
A song from the past, standing tall against time's horizon, as a reminder that simple ingenuity can conquer even the harshest foe. And where would we be without the humble windmill? Well, we hope the end of harvest season allows you to kick back and spend more time with friends and family. And from all of us here at Farm Journal, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving.